Lieutenant James Parker drummed his fingers on his patrol cars, steering wheel watching cars pass by on the quiet suburban street. It was nearly the end of his shift, and he was already thinking about getting home to catch the game. The setting sun cast long shadows across the manicured lawns of the upscale neighborhood, where most residents were just returning from work. A black Mercedes S-Class caught his attention as it rolled to a stop at the intersection, signaling left. Something the tinted windows made Parker sit up straighter. He'd been working this beat for 15 years, and he prided himself on knowing every resident's car. This one was unfamiliar. The Mercedes turned left, and Parker pulled out to follow it. The car was doing exactly the speed limit, but Parker's instincts were buzzing. He ran the plates. The car was registered to someone named Robert Thompson. The address matched a house in this neighborhood, but Parker had never seen this vehicle before. After following for 2 blocks, Parker hit his lights. The Mercedes pulled over smoothly, stopping in front of a large colonial-style home. Parker approached the driver's side window, hand resting near his hip as the window smoothly lowered. The interior light revealed a black man in his early 60s, dressed in a crisp white dress shirt and tie. License and registration, Parker demanded, not bothering with the usual pleasantries. "May I ask why I'm being pulled over, officer?" The man's voice was calm and measured with a hint of authority that made Parker bristle. "License and registration first, sir," Parker repeated, emphasizing the sir with barely concealed sarcasm. The driver's movements were deliberate as he reached for his wallet. "I live in this house right here," he said, gesturing to the colonial. "I just returned from Washington, D.C. today." Parker snatched the offered documents. The license belonged to Major General Robert Thompson, U.S. Army. Parker's stomach tightened, but he pushed the feeling aside. The registration matched the plates. "Step out of the vehicle," Parker ordered. "Officer, I don't believe that's necessary. I've shown you my step out of the vehicle now." Parker's voice rose, his hand moving to his weapon. General Thompson's expression hardened, but he remained composed. "Officer, I'm going to reach for my phone to call your supervisor." Parker's training kicked in, but all wrong. Instead of de-escalating, he yanked open the car door. "Out now." The general began to comply, moving slowly and deliberately. "I want to be very clear that I'm following your instructions under protest." As Thompson stepped out, Parker grabbed his arm roughly, spinning him around to face the car. The general was several inches taller than him, and Parker felt a surge of adrenaline. "Hands on the vehicle." "Officer, this is completely unnecessary. I'm a major general in the United States Army, and you're making a serious." Parker moved to force the general's hands onto the hood, but Thompson turned to face him, keeping his hands visible but refusing to submit to the humiliation. "Do not resist." Parker shouted, reaching for his taser. That's when they both heard the sound of a car door slamming. A woman's voice rang out clear and sharp. "What the hell do you think you're doing to my husband?" Dr. Michelle Thompson, chief of surgery at the local hospital, strode across her front lawn. She had just pulled into their driveway moments before and witnessed the scene unfolding. "Ma'am, stay back," Parker warned, but his voice wavered. "I will not stay back while you harass my husband in front of our own home." Dr. Thompson pulled out her phone and started recording. "I'm streaming this live, officer. Now remove your hand from your weapon and step away from my husband." More car doors opened and closed. The commotion had drawn the attention of neighbors. Mr. Wilson, the retired judge from next door, was walking over. So was Mrs. Chun, the city council member from across the street. "James Parker," Mrs. Chen's voice cut through the tension. "What are you doing?" Parker's hand fell from his weapon as the situation rapidly spiraled out of his control. General Thompson hadn't moved, his hand still visible, his posture straight and dignified. "Officer Parker." The general's voice was quiet, but carried the weight of decades of command. "I recommend you call your supervisor immediately." Parker's radio crackled to life. "Lieutenant Parker, this is dispatch. We're receiving multiple calls about a situation at 1242 Oak Hill Drive. Please respond." With trembling fingers, Parker keyed his radio. "This is Parker. Send Supervisor to my location." The next 30 minutes passed in a blur. Captain Sarah Rodriguez arrived to find a small crowd of prominent community members, all recording on their phones. Dr. Thompson was still broadcasting live. Judge Wilson was on the phone with the police chief. General Thompson finally broke his parade rest stance to hand Captain Rodriguez his military ID and security clearance cards. "Captain, I just returned from meetings at the Pentagon regarding military preparedness initiatives. I was pulling into my driveway when your officer decided to conduct what I can only assume was a racially motivated stop." Rodriguez's face drained of color as she examined the credentials. "The general, I've commanded thousands of soldiers, Captain. I've led men and women into combat. I received classified briefings from 3 different presidents. And tonight one of your officers pulled me over for driving my own car in my own neighborhood, then attempted to assault me on my own property." Dr. Thompson stepped forward. "We'll be filing a formal complaint, of course. And since I've captured most of this incident on video, I expect it will receive proper attention." Park stood rooted to the spot, his career flashing before his eyes. He'd worked so hard to make lieutenant, and in 15 minutes, he'd managed to racially profile and attempt to detain a 2-star general. Captain Rodriguez turned to Parker. "Lieutenant, surrender your badge and weapon. You're suspended pending investigation." As Parker numbly complied, General Thompson spoke again. "Captain, I'd like to make something clear. I don't want this officer's career ended over this incident." Everyone turned to look at the general in surprise. "What I want," Thompson continued, "is for this to be a teaching moment. Lieutenant Parker made assumptions based on the color of my skin. He escalated a peaceful situation into a potentially dangerous one. He abused his authority and violated my civil rights. These are serious issues that plague law enforcement across our nation. But ending his career won't solve the underlying problems." The turn to face Parker directly. "What I want is for you to undergo comprehensive racial bias training. I want you to spend time working with community organizations that serve minority populations. I want you to understand why what happened here tonight was not just wrong, but dangerous and destructive to the very community you're sworn to protect." Parker's shoulders sagged as the full weight of his actions hit him. "Sir, I'm sorry I was completely out of line." "Yes, you were," Thompson agreed. "I'm sorry isn't enough. You need to do better. We all need to do better." Captain Rodriguez nodded. "General Thompson, if you're willing, I'd like to invite you to speak at our department's training sessions. Your perspective would be invaluable." "I'd be honored, Captain. Change happens through education and understanding, not just punishment." The crowd began to disperse, but the impact of the evening would ripple through the department and community for months to come. Parker's suspension lasted 6 weeks, during which he underwent intensive training and community service. He spent time working with veteran organizations, learning about the experiences of Black service members, and confronting his own biases. When he finally returned to duty, his first stop was the Thompson residence. This time, he parked his patrol car and walked up to the front door like a proper visitor. 8 minutes and 51 seconds. General Thompson answered the door in his full dress uniform, having just returned from another Pentagon meeting. "Parker," he said not unkindly, "what can I do for you?" Parker swallowed hard. "Sir, I wanted to thank you, not just for not ending my career, but for helping me become a better officer. These past 6 weeks have opened my eyes to things I never understood before." Thompson studied him for a moment. "Have you learned anything specific you'd like to share?" "Yes, sir. I learned that my badge doesn't make me superior to anyone. It makes me to everyone. I learned that my assumptions about people based on their appearance aren't just wrong, they're dangerous. And I learned that true authority doesn't come from a badge or a weapon, but from character and dignity, like the kind you showed that night." The general nodded slowly. "Good lessons, Lieutenant. Now the real test begins, applying them every day on the job." "Yes, sir, and I wanted you to know that I've requested a permanent assignment to community outreach. I want to be part of the solution." A small smile crossed Thompson's face. Now that lieutenant is what real change looks like. He extended his hand, and Parker shook it firmly. As Parker walked back to his patrol car, he caught his reflection in the window. The badge on his chest gleamed in the sunlight, but it felt different now. It wasn't a symbol of power anymore. It was a reminder of responsibility, service, and a continuous journey toward being better. General Thompson watched from his doorway as Parker drove away. His wife joined him, slipping her arm through his. "Do you think he really changed?" she asked. "Time will tell," Thompson replied. But sometimes the hardest lessons leave the deepest impact, and sometimes the moments that test us the most become the moments that transform us. He looked at the stars on his uniform, symbols of authority earned through decades of service, leadership, and integrity. They reminded him of something he always told his troops. Real power isn't about dominating others. It's about lifting them up even when they've knocked you down. The incident became a case study in the police academy's training program. The video Dr. Thompson recorded that night was shown to every new recruit, followed by a general powerful message about authority, respect, and the responsibility that comes with wearing a badge. The story spread beyond their community, contributing to a larger conversation about police reform and racial bias. But perhaps its greatest impact was on one police officer who learned that true strength isn't measured by the power you wield, but by the wisdom with which you use it. As for Lieutenant Parker, he went on to become one of the department's most effective community liaison officers. He never forgot the lesson he learned that night, that sometimes the people we're quickest to judge are the ones who are the most to teach us. In General Thompson, he continued his work at the Pentagon, but also became a respected voice in police reform and community relations. He often told people that the incident in front of his house wasn't just about one officer's mistake. It was about America's ongoing journey toward justice and understanding we all have moments that define us, he would say in his speeches to law enforcement groups. But it's not the moment itself that matters most, it's what we learn from it and how we use that knowledge to create positive change. The story of the badge and the stars became a powerful reminder that real progress doesn't come from punishment alone, but from the willingness to learn, grow, and work together toward a better future. It showed that even in moments of confrontation and injustice, there's always an opportunity for transformation and understanding if we're brave enough to seize it.